Hey everyone, Poro here, and as you can see, if I move my webcam real quick, we are back with week 6 of Global Power Rankings, and we welcome back the PCS, who do have a team on this list again. We'll see how long that lasts. PCS got booted off pretty quickly last time, but they're here this time, so we can celebrate that for now, and as promised, I'm going to move my camera down here this time, so that way I'm not getting in the way of some of the losses that are going to appear to the right of the screen. And with that, let's get right on into the rankings. In 25th, we have a little bit of a roller coaster ride in RNG. At the start of the week, they were actually booted off of the top 25 list, but they ended up picking up some wins and making their way back onto the top 25 list, so they stay on the exact same position they were last time. Neither of their wins actually meant anything, but they did win, so they earned their spot back. And also a couple of teams faced some really bad losses like WE, who got booted off of the list, which left some room for RNG to come on. In 24th, making their first appearance on this list, we have the PCS representative PSG Talon. This team is probably very familiar to a lot of you, so what brings them onto this list? Well, at the start of the season, they weren't doing super hot. They were, I think, 4-2, and they were starting jungler Husha, which some of you may remember as the Beyond Gaming jungler for the last 2 seasons. They ended up swapping out Husha for Junjia, which is a huge, huge acquisition. For those who don't know, Junjia was the substitute jungler for EDG. Junjia is an absolute solo queue monster. He hit rank 1 on the EU West ladder during Worlds, and he has a very, very good win rate within the LPL. Ever since they acquired Junjia, they have not lost, and I believe that that roster upgrade is good enough to put them on this list. In 23rd, also making their return to the list, is OMG after being booted off last week. The thing that did it this time is that they beat Thundertalk Gaming in a 2-0. They also did suffer a loss to Rare Atom 2-1, but Rare Atom has been overperforming lately, so it's not too big of a deal for them. In 22nd, staying in the same position is Cloud9. They picked up 2 more wins this week, but not against teams that really matter. Moving down a bunch of spots from the LEC is Vitality, because they ended up dropping a series to SK 2-0, which means they did not finish in the top 4 in the LEC, so they are the 5th place representative from Europe. In 20th, in a similar boat to Cloud9, is EG. They also went 3-0 in Super Week, but nothing super impactful that would make them move up a bunch of spots. In 19th, and again proving what they're worth, is Koi from the LEC. They didn't really do anything this week except for lose to G2, but they did pick up 1 win against G2, and their series looked convincing enough for me to say, yeah, I'll keep them onto the list. In 18th, making their return to the list, is SK Gaming, who picked up some really good series wins against both Heretics and Vitality, 2-0s for both of them, so they are back solidly on this list in the top 4 in the LEC. One of the big stories of this week, FlyQuest do not finish the first round robin undefeated as they dropped a game to TSM, meaning that their ascent into the top 10 or even higher has been drastically halted. Moving down a little bit in 16th is Mad Lions. They did pick up a 2-0 against Astralis, so it might seem weird that they go down, but that's that way they could make way for the next spot, which is Hanwha Life Esports, which takes up the 15th spot. Hanwha Life has been doing really well ever since their early drought in the season, and they picked up 2 more wins this week against teams that aren't super important, but the thing that is important is that they're finally becoming consistent. IG tanks a couple of spots this week due to picking up 2 more losses, but those losses were against Top Esports and JDG, arguably 2 of the best teams in China, so it's not really too much of a knock for them. Moving up in 13th is Thundertalk Gaming, who 2-0'd Weibo Gaming, which is really big, but then they got 2-0'd by OMG, so it's like, I don't really know what's going on, but still, a win against Weibo is really impressive. In 12th, trying to crawl their way back up, is LNG, who picked up 2 more wins, and they are now 6-1. The highest ranked Western representative for this list is G2, who had a really convincing series against Koi, winning 3-1 in the best of 5. They pulled out some super interesting drafts that makes me excited to see what they'll do in the future. If they're able to dominate the rest of the LEC playoffs, maybe they'll even move into top 10. Holding firm in 10th is KT Rolster, who, like Hanwha Life Esports, picked up 2 more wins this week against not very impressive teams, but again, the important thing is that they are consistent and they 2-0'd both of those teams. BLG moves down a bunch of spots because they managed to lose to WE, who had some really bad losses earlier in the week, so that loss is not a good loss anymore. Damwon also suffered a loss to Live Sandbox in the second round robin, meaning that they have cemented themselves as the 4th best team in the LCK instead of 3rd, so they get chunked a bunch of spots. Speaking of the devil, here is Live Sandbox, who picked up a win against Damwon Kia. Now we're going to have a whole bunch of LPL teams who have fallen from grace, because a lot of big LPL names lost. First up, we have Weibo Gaming, who ended up dropping that 2-0 series to TT. We also have JDG, who ended up losing a series to EDG, so JDG is no longer the top dog of the LPL. EDG moves up because they beat JDG, but they aren't a top LPL team because then they went and lost to top esports. The only thing Gen G did this week was lose to T1 again, but it was a competitive 2-1 series, and enough of the LPL teams lost all of their games that Gen G gets to stick around in that third place spot. And just when I knocked them down because they hadn't actually found wins against anyone, Top Esports decides to prove me wrong, getting 2 big wins this week against both EDG and IG. And of course, keeping the number 1 spot is T1, who managed to do a lot this week, beating Live Sandbox and beating Gen G for the second time. As always, here's my completed list of all of the rankings 1 through 25 with their correct records, and hopefully I actually have them in the right spots this week. I did double check, so if I get it wrong again, then I don't know. Big news is that VCS will be starting soon, so you can expect to see Saigon Buffalo and Gigabyte Marines make their way onto this list eventually, unless they choke all of their games. See you next week.